Today we're going to talk about Republican efforts to cut Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, and the pretty pathetic way they're trying to distract you from it. And I have two interviews this week. I interview Senator Bernie Sanders about how to protect Social Security, his response to Republican fear-mongering about the army of 87,000 IRS agents, and how to get the government to keep prescription drug prices down. And I'm joined by Congresswoman Katie Porter to discuss her decision to run for the U.S. Senate, her response to calls for George Santos to resign, and whether there's a way for a few Republicans to join with Democrats to raise the debt ceiling and avoid default. I'm Brian Tyler Cohen, and you're watching No Lie. Man, who would have guessed that Republicans spending a week just trying to elect a speaker would be their high watermark? We're now like a week into the GOP majority in the House, and it turns out the Republicans are prepared to make good on their promises to hold the debt ceiling hostage until they're able to get cuts on earned benefits like Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. Now, first off, I want to explain here what this means. Congress has to raise the debt limit to be able to pay our existing obligations. Failing to raise the debt ceiling isn't some strategy to prevent new spending. It just prevents us from actually paying for what we actually spent money on already. If we don't raise the debt ceiling, we default. That'll not only crater the U.S. economy, it'll crater the global economy, sink the U.S. dollar, and crash markets worldwide. So that's some background here. That's the fire that Republicans are playing with right now. Now, Republicans have tried for years to cut what they're calling entitlement programs, Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. Why? Because they say they want small government, blah, blah, blah. Short answer is because those programs help working people and they don't care about working people. They're there to reward their wealthy donors who fund their campaigns so that they can stay in power and reward more donors who fund their campaigns and keep them in power, and that cycle repeats itself over and over and over again. But they know how popular those programs are, and so they can't just come out and say they want to cut them, and so instead they've landed on pretending that they're going away anyway. This past week, a few Republicans have come out to resurface the lie that Social Security would soon be insolvent. Now, that is absolutely not true. In reality, Social Security will not be insolvent, just one of the trust funds that helps pay benefits will. The Old Age and Survivors Insurance Trust Fund, which helps pay the benefits for current retirees, that's scheduled to be depleted by the mid-2030s. But that fund only accounts for about a quarter of Social Security benefits. The other 3/4 is paid for by payroll taxes of current American workers, meaning so long as we've got Americans working and paying taxes, which they're certainly doing with a 50-year low of 3.5% unemployment, then Social Security will still pay out benefits. But you might ask, well, okay, what about the Old Age and Survivors Insurance Trust Fund, since that does still fund a quarter of Social Security benefits? And here's the answer. Congress should pass legislation to fund it, the way Congress passes legislation to fund any priorities in this country. When Republicans come out and complain that Social Security will be insolvent, that's like them complaining that the military won't be funded unless they fund it. They never forget to fund the military. That's always a given. But when it comes time to affording our nation's seniors the bare minimum, Social Security checks that, let's be honest, aren't even enough to live on as it is, well, suddenly those Republicans have no agency and just have no idea how we could possibly make sure that it's solvent when they are literally the ones who are in charge of keeping it solvent. Like, you've heard that budgets are a party's statement of values. When Republicans refuse to treat Social Security and other earned benefits as valid, they are telling you that the money you paid into those programs for your entire life doesn't matter, and that the dignity afforded to you by Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid doesn't matter. If they cared about that stuff, they would pass legislation to shore it up. But instead, they stand there and lie about it being insolvent so that they can use that as a pretense to privatize it and pretend that they have no agency when they are the only ones who have any agency here. You know, I spoke in last week's video podcast episode about how Republicans break things because they're trying to prove that government can't work. And so if they break it themselves, they can then point to that as proof that government doesn't work. This is a prime example of that. See, that one trust that feeds into Social Security benefits is running dry, and instead of shoring it up, which they have full power to do, they instead sit back and say, told you, it's going insolvent. You won't have any Social Security in 10 years. Better privatize it now because there's no way back from this. This is like if a firefighter was called to fight a forest fire and just stood there telling everybody that the entire forest is going to burn down instead of, putting out the fire. That's what Republicans are doing here. Standing there and watching it burn instead of doing their jobs and making sure that it doesn't. Like, we don't accept this in any other job, so why in the world do we accept this here? And here's the craziest part, because they need to distract from this issue, which is by far the most pressing issue facing the government right now because we're projected to hit our debt limit on January 19th. Instead, they're pretending that the real issue facing Americans right now is that Joe Biden and his government goons are coming to break down your doors and take your gas stoves. All this because a government agency released a study outlining how gas stoves release high levels of nitrogen oxides, which could lead to respiratory issues like asthma in children. That's it. Joe Biden is not making gas stoves illegal, but that hasn't stopped the entire right from coalescing around this issue like they're gearing up for the Revolutionary War. All Republicans have is the same tired old playbook of cooking up some manufactured outrage and then getting half the country whipped into a frenzy. And if it's not your stoves, then it's Mr. Potato Head or M&M's or Starbucks Christmas cups or Grey Poupon mustard or Obama's tan suit or whatever other tired old scandals the right waste their time on to distract from their actual policies. And I've thought about this part a lot because this is what drives me the most nuts because it's just straight political theater. But the thing is, this might work on a base that already supports them, but it's showing the rest of America, and especially Gen Z, who very clearly doesn't fall for this bullshit the way that Fox News viewers do, they're basically just ceding the future to the left. All because they have only one playbook, and the vast majority of this country can very easily see through it. See through the fact that Joe Biden is not coming to take your stove. So if they want to spend all their political capital on another tired circus, that's on them. But I think it puts on display pretty well the difference between the two parties. And if pretending that your stove is at risk is your top political issue, then Republicans are letting you know that they're out there fighting for you. Here's a preview of my interview with Senator Bernie Sanders. I was reading about your bill with Senator Warren to expand Social Security benefits by $2,400 a year and to fully fund it for the next 75 years, all without raising any taxes on 93% of Americans. The irony here is that Republicans demanded that the United States Postal Service prepay its health benefits for future retirees for 75 years because they wanted to sabotage that program. You're obviously not looking to sabotage the Social Security program, but it's ironic that Republicans demanded funding for the USPS 75 years out, and yet none of them are going to sign on to legislation to fund Social Security 75 years out when it's a legitimate effort to actually fund that program.
Look, they don't believe in Social Security. They would rather have people make their investments on Wall Street, right? Their retirement investments. They don't believe in Medicare. They would rather give more power to the insurance companies. They certainly don't believe in Medicaid. They don't believe in major federal programs. And our job is to stand up and strengthen. And by the way, what ends up happening is when you defund these federal programs, people lose faith in them as well. So our job is to make it clear that Medicare is a very popular program. It's an efficient program. We've got to strengthen it. I personally believe in Medicare for all, but that obviously is not where Republicans and some Democrats, by the way, are coming from.
What do you say to people who say that the private market is more efficient and more effective, and so why not bring Social Security into the private market?
Sure. Well, if you think that's the case, then take a look at what happened in 2008 when Wall Street crashed. Look, Social Security is not an investment opportunity. It is an insurance policy. You're not there to make huge amounts of money. You're there to be sure, 100% sure, that when you get old, it will be there for you. You want to invest in Wall Street? Go for it. That's not what Social Security is about. And the truth is that Social Security, since its inception, we should be very proud of that. No matter whether the economy is terrible, whether it's good, never has an American received a letter from Social Security saying, sorry, you didn't get your payment this month when there's not enough money. We have paid every nickel owed to every eligible beneficiary. That is what Social Security is about.
And here's a preview of my interview with Katie Porter. There's a concern that, you eked out a win in a House district that's historically been a red district. And I think a lot of people acknowledge that you're one of the few politicians who can win in a district like that. And this move might put that district at risk for what is otherwise a safe blue Senate seat. So what would be your response to that?
Well, I want to challenge a couple of things there. First off, my victories were powered by the team and the community and the grassroots volunteers that won these races. My name was on the ballot, but there were volunteers and staffers and donors and people who made phone calls and postcarded that made it possible. And I have every confidence that that community of support will be there for whoever chooses to run in this 47th congressional district. So I am absolutely going to lend my strong support and do the work here in Orange County to making sure that we hold that seat. The second thing is I want to remind everybody, Orange County has changed and is changing. We now have more registered Democrats than Republicans. And a big part of the challenge in this last election was that we had 70% new voters. So we just didn't have the full 2-year period to get to know those people, to earn their trust. It's an accelerated timeline caused by redistricting. So and the last thing I want to say is, look, we need to win not just this seat in the 47th district, but we need to pick up every House seat we can and every Senate seat we can. And I think one of the things I bring to this race is I am a strong competitive campaigner. I know how to win in every part and pocket of this country and every part and pocket of California. And California, both in this cycle and long term, needs to be doing its part. Having a senator that can go out and help in places like Montana or Ohio, having a senator who can raise money to make sure that every candidate has the resources they need. So for me, I love campaigning. A big part of this is being able to do that political work cycle after cycle to help us win up and down the ballot in Orange County, but also other places.
To watch the full interviews with both Bernie Sanders and Katie Porter, click the thumbnail right here on the screen or check out the interviews playlist on my YouTube channel. And as always, to see more of my content, don't forget to subscribe.